How's it going, everybody? K-George here with the first episode of a new series I'm actually starting up called Pokévals, which is where I will take just a Pokemon from the Sun and Moon metagame, whether it's a new Pokemon, maybe underrated, an old Pokemon that got a buff, or maybe just like an old favorite of yours, and grading them and just doing an analysis of several aspects of them, such as just typing, their stats, move pool, good support Pokemon, and counters to them as well, and just some sets overall. And I'll be showing just a replay or two just to kind of show how the Pokemon functions and what it performs best at. I will be mostly covering the OU and the UU tier to begin with. I don't really know RU and NU that well, to be honest, and the tiers aren't even settled all the way. I believe UU actually just got out of the beta stage as it is, but even then these tiers are still kind of hectic. So be patient, and we might be able to jump into those once I learn a bit more and they're settled. But for this first episode, we're going to be focusing on Mimikyu, which is one of my personal favorite Pokemon from Generation 7. Really cool typing. I absolutely love this design. I didn't give the design a grade. That might be something I might start doing, but I'd honestly give it like an A or just like S. I mean, if you look at just the animations in the game, they're absolutely fantastic. And it's not your typical Pikachu ripoff this time. That spot is reserved for Togedemaru. But anyways, let's just jump straight into its typing and its abilities. So typing is Ghost and Fairy, which I cannot stress how good of a typing this is. Ghost is able to hit pretty much every single type neutrally except for Normal, which has an immunity, and Dark, which resists Ghost. Now Fairy manages to take care of the Dark type, and you're able to, hit the normal types neutrally with the Fairy, which is fantastic. You are also immune to Normal, Fighting, and Dragon because of this typing, and you have a 4 times resistance to Bug. These are pretty good offensive typings that you typically see too. Dragon especially. Bug with Pokemon such as Scizor on the U-turn. Granted, Scizor's probably be going for Bullet Punch on Mimikyu, but stuff like that is just, it's very good typing in that aspect. I would say it's better offensively more than it is defensively. You don't really resist a lot. That's one of the things with Ghost. You do have to watch out for Ghost types and Steel types because they still are super effective. Dark types are no longer super effective because of the Fairy typing helping out your Ghost part, and the Ghost part is helping out the Fairy typing there by getting rid of Poison as a weakness, so that is neutral. Overall, I would say it's probably a grade A typing. Absolutely amazing. It's a new combination. We've never seen it before, and I think just it works wonders with its 2 stabs that it has with Play Rough. And the problem with Ghost typing, unfortunately, though, is that the move pool is kind of shallow, honestly. Typically, the strongest move you'll be seeing on the special side coming out from Pokemon are like Shadow Ball from like a Gengar. While on the physical side, I guess the best you might see is like something like Phantom or Shadow Force. But the fact that, it's not that reliable. Your most reliable physical Ghost stab would probably be Shadow Claw. I mean, Shadow Bone from Marowak, but Shadow Claw is probably the most widespread, which is base 70. Which really isn't that strong, and Play Rough is also base 90, which is, it's not bad, but nothing amazing. It's nothing like, a Hydro Pump or like a Brave Bird or stuff like that in terms of power, which we'll couple with Mimikyu stats when we get to that in a bit. As for abilities, Mimikyu has the Disguise ability, which is absolutely amazing, just for the simple fact that you have a substitute, no matter what. For those who don't know, what Disguise does is, let's say you are at 100%, you send out Mimikyu in the beginning, you get hit by, let's say a Shadow Ball, super effective move. You will then turn into a busted form, and you will take no damage. So your substitute has essentially faded. Now, your Disguise will never come back, so if you break your Disguise, and if you switch Mimikyu out, bring him back in, your Disguise will still be broken, and you will proceed to take damage after the Disguise is broken. As for moves like Status and touching Rocky Helmet, those will go through your Disguise, but they will not break them. So if you are Will-O-Wisp, it's still going to go through. You're still going to take, your, I believe it's 6 or 8% now instead of the 12. But your Disguise will still be intact, which is very good, honestly, that you don't have to sacrifice the 25% to set up a substitute. Overall, I'd probably give this one an A as well. I just think it's absolutely fantastic. I can't stop saying how, the word absolutely, just because this is such a strong start for this Pokemon, just looking at this type and this ability. And it works very well, especially for what Mimikyu wants to do, is typically set up like a Swords Dance in order to get off that damage, which we will actually see it really needs to do as we take a look at its stats here. So with taking a look at the base stat totals for each one individually, we have HP, which is 55. Now, 55 base HP is pretty mediocre. It's not very good, but depending on the HP stat, it can actually work very well with defenses. For example, we have Rotom Wash, which has a base 50 HP, but 107 in both defenses. And Rotom Wash is definitely one of the bulkiest Pokemon that you're going to face. Granted, that is with defensive investment and focus on that. That's not really what you're going to want to do with Mimikyu. So 55 HP, not that good, but it's pretty typical of Ghost types. If you take a look at Pokemon such as Spiritomb, Sableye, just other bulky Ghost types, I think Cofagrigus as well, just stuff like that, is typically they're very low. As for the attack stat, base 90, this is where I fit one of the biggest problems lies with Mimikyu. Base 90 is okay at best. It's nothing amazing. If you take a look at the premier hitters in the OU tier, we have stuff like Garchomp with 135 attacks. Same thing with Tyranitar around there, 135, 134. Tapu Bulu right now, I think it has 130. Bisharp with about 120, 125. Weavile around the same area. These Pokemon are so strong that they're just able to do the damage, and base 90 just isn't enough to cut it, even with the 2 stabs, especially when you put into perspective how weak Shadow Claw is as a move in terms of base power. I believe Shadow Claw does have a high crit chance, but still, you're playing based off of luck at that point. You kind of don't want to rely on that as much. So I believe if Mimikyu had just a tiny bit more attack, maybe like 100, it'd be so much better. But this is why it struggles with a decent amount of Pokemon, especially the bulkier Pokemon. Mimikyu is definitely not a wall breaker at all. This is not a Kyurem Black, base 170 attack, anything like that. What you're going to want to do with Mimikyu is mainly attack offensive threats and hit weakened walls, which you'll see kind of in the replay that's coming up. The Pokemon were weakened and put it into position where Mimikyu could clean up and finish them all off, which is what I believe it does best with, especially just how good the stabs are at finishing up in terms of coverage. Moving on to defense, base 80 defense isn't bad. It's not amazing, but it's not bad. It's good natural bulk, but unfortunately it is paired with the base 55 HP, and we will probably not be putting investment in HP or defense, like at least your max investment, which means that it's just kind of there. It doesn't really do much. It doesn't hurt much either. It's definitely better than having something that could be a lot lower. Speaking of lower, looking at special attack, we have base 50, which is practically unusable. I see no reason really to use that base 50 special attack or run any sort of special attacking Mimikyu. It gets access to moves like Shadow Ball, Dark Pulse, Dazzling Gleam. I just feel like you would get way more out of running stuff like Shadow Claw and Play Rough and Shadow Sneak as well. I guess maybe one idea you could have is like Hidden Power Fighting, maybe the hit Bisharp or something, but even then I don't think that would OHKO, and I feel like Play Rough would just get the job done way better. So I don't really see any reason to run it. If you were to run some sort of special attacking set, I would just run Gengar. It's a better ghost type. You can run another fairy type, something like that. Now, here's where we start to get into Mimikyu's actual highest stat, its special defense, which is base 105. This is actually very good, very respectable. This is what I was talking about with pairing the HP with the special defense. Although, again, like I said, we're probably not going to be focusing on the defense investment, but it's good natural bulk, and that's exactly what you want, because you want Mimikyu to be able to get off the hits necessary to kind of get through these offensive threats and stuff like that. It's actually able to take Choice Specs Greninja's Water Shuriken. I believe it does about 60% around there. It's a lot, but if you still have your disguise up, you have completely mitigated the damage you're going to take. You knock it out with a Play Rough. It's very good actually for natural bulk, and so respectable. But here was the other problem that I wanted to get into depth about Mimikyu's stat distribution is 96 speed. 96 speed it's good. Do not get me wrong, but it's also too low. Base 100 speed is probably the best benchmark, I would say, in the OU tier. You take a look at Pokemon like Charizard, Salamence is 100 base speed, Garchomp hits 102, Nihilego hits 103, Hydreigon, which is probably down like UU now, is like 98 base speed. These Pokemon just surround the 100 base speed mark, and 96 just isn't enough to outspeed it. But on the other hand, 96 allows you to beat Tapu Lele by 1 point. Choice Scarf Tapu Lele is the most common set, so it doesn't really help you there, especially because Shadow Sneak isn't going to be able to hit because of the Psychic terrain. But if they're running Choice Specs, Expert Belt, maybe even Life Orb, you're going to be able to hit them with a Shadow Claw, and after Rocks, it is a guaranteed OHKO. Shadow Claw does about, at least your standard set for Tapu Lele, Shadow Claw does about 88 to, I believe, 100%. That's the roll range. Remember, you won't be able to finish off with Shadow Sneak again, so getting up Rocks is very important for Mimikyu. Just hazards in general to help Mimikyu pick up these kills, just finish off the targets to make up for the lower attack stat. You're also able to outspeed Pokemon such as Darmanitan, Crocodile, I believe, with 92 base speed. Landorus, a lot of Landorus have been running around with the Supersonic Sky Strike or the Dual Dance set, as opposed to always seeing either Choice Scarf or your typical defensive set. So there's a lot more variety for Landorus. Landorus is a Pokemon that has just improved immensely for Sun and Moon, and you know, it's like, it was already an amazing Pokemon, but it got just more onto it. So having 96 speed is very good. I believe you can actually run Adamant instead of Jolly if you really wanted to, although those Pokemon that I listed, you'll have to be aware of being outsped. I believe with Adamant Nature, with 252 speed, you will still be able to outspeed Jolly, Mamoswine, and then Bisharp as well, and Pokemon just around that range. Breloom also, so it's pretty good speed, but again, it is held back by a tiny bit. If it hit 100 speed, it'd be a lot better. You'd be like, you'd have a lot more speed ties and just be able to keep up with kind of the pace of the tier. As for base stat total, you're hitting 476. 476 at first look isn't like amazing. It's just kind of there, but it's all about the stat distribution. Like my friend suggested, Darmanitan, if you take a look at it, it's kind of relatively low compared to other Pokemon, but the way that it was distributed makes it a very good Pokemon. Or taking a look at something like Azumarill or Diggersby, both have lower stat totals, but their abilities completely make up for the lower stats, which is, so what I'm trying to say mainly is that stats aren't exactly everything. Don't get me wrong, they're very important, but if you have something else to make up for it, such as Mimikyu's ability with Disguise or just good typing, you can work wonders. Overall, I decided to give the stat distribution a B. I was kind of leaning towards a B- here, but I guess I just kind of, I felt like the Pokemon such as Tapu Lele are critical that you can hit, and just the ability to, I believe it hits 279 attack with Jolly Nature, and pretty much you'll most likely just get off your Sword Stance, so you know you're double that. You're starting off with 500. It's workable. And just a natural book to hit and to survive strong special attacks is very nice. And not amazing by any means, and I think this is actually the downfall of Mimikyu that kind of brings down its typing and its ability, but you can still work with it. It still has the tools necessary to put in the work, get the kills in the game. Now, moving on to the move pool, I've decided to divide this into kind of 4 sections. Mainly the offensive moves that you'll typically see. So we have Shadow Claw, Play Rough, Shadow Sneak, and then Wood Hammer and Leech Life kind of is just 2 outer moves that you won't see as much. The top 3 are typically the most common moves that you're going to see in terms of dealing damage. Wood Hammer is kind of just coverage. I guess you could, if you wanted to hit something like Suicune or maybe Tapu Fini a tiny bit harder, do watch out for Recoil. I believe Recoil will not get rid of your Disguise though, so do not worry about that at all. Leech Life, I haven't really found too much of a purpose for hitting Leech Life. There's those Pokemon that do bother, the Pokemon that bother Mimikyu, as we'll see in a bit, aren't really harmed that much by Leech Life. It's not really going to do much. Same thing kind of goes for Wood Hammer. So I would advise Shadow Claw, Play Rough, and Shadow Sneak as your main forms of attack, but Wood Hammer and Leech Life do exist there if, you know, there's other Pokemon that bother your team that you really need to hit. As for support moves, the long list actually is Will-O-Wisp, Taunt, Toxic, Destiny Bond, Rest, Sleep Talk, Light Screen, and Pain Split. It's actually a pretty good list of moves that you can make use of there. I think that just comes with the Ghost typing. Typically, Ghost types have a lot of similar moves with your Will-O-Wisp, Destiny Bond, Pain Split, and it's honestly fantastic. I haven't really found a set that worked too well focusing on kind of just supporting. Destiny Bond I could see a lot of use for, especially with the 96 speed. You typically will beat some of the leads that you'll see in the tier. Like I said with Mamoswine, you do have to be aware of stuff like Ice Shard though, of course. Pain Split, of course, get your health back. Light Screen would be interesting to see on that lead set, maybe with the Destiny Bond or something like that. Same thing with Will-O-Wisp, maybe Taunt for that, kind of like a, what's the word, like, just to prevent like Stealth Rocks or stuff like that in the beginning of the game. And then maybe Rest Sleep Talk with some sort of move that will come up in the setup list, which we have Swords Dance, Bulk Up, and Hone Claws. So maybe you could do something like a Rest Sleep Talk Bulk Up set, or Rest Sleep Talk Swords Dance. I would recommend Swords Dance or Bulk Up over Hone Claws unless you really, really don't want to miss a play rough. That's pretty much the main reason for having Hone Claws here. Yeah, I just, the only problem with the Rest Sleep Talk set, if you were to try something like that, is, again, that you would have to completely focus on your bulk, or not completely focus on it, but put some investment in your bulk, and that means you're taking away from something like speed or attack, and Mimikyu really needs that to just kind of abuse. And there's also the problem with, if you run mono play rough potentially, you're going to have to deal with steel types that are going to completely wall you. A huge problem for Mimikyu. If you run mono Shadow Claw or something like that, you're going to have to deal with normal types that you literally will not be able to touch. They set up on you, and at that point it's the game. So it's very risky, but it'd be interesting to see. I would like to see somebody try it out. If somebody does try it out, let me know. I would love to see it maybe put into work. As for the Z moves, the top 3 Z moves probably would be Never Ending Nightmare, which is your strong, very strong ghost type move that you'll most likely want to pair with your Shadow Claw. Especially after you get up a Sword Stance, this works wonders. Absolutely fantastic. It actually O-code a Tapu Bulu in a game that I was in. It did an immense amount to Magearna. I do not remember the exact number, but it did do a lot to Magearna to put it in range of the rest of my Pokemon to sweep. So yeah, overall, I think this would probably be the strongest of the Z moves to put on Mimikyu. Probably one of my top, Ghost EMZ is probably one of my top recommended items for Mimikyu. As for Z Splash, what Z Splash does is raises your attack stat by 3 stages, which is really strong. Like, more than a Swords Dance, and this will really get the kills if you need them. The only problem with this is it's pretty risky in the sense that you're putting all your eggs in one basket. You could have Swords Dance, which is a much more reliable form of setting up. Sure, it's down another attack raise. It's just more reliable because, like I said, steel types really, really bother Mimikyu, and you're already not going to probably be doing that much with a Z Splash. Swords Dance should be able to do the work that you already need it to. And then for the last move, I have Z Bulk Up. Much like the same problems with Z Splash, what this will do is kind of puts all your eggs in one basket, and if you get phased out, there's a haze, or you're not able to pick up the kills, and it's kind of a problem. But what it does is it raises your attack and defense normally, as Bulk Up normally does, but it also raises your attack at another stage, so it's pretty much a Swords Dance plus kind of like a defense curl or something like that. So attack plus 2, defense plus 1. Pretty solid, and something I really want to try out. I think that set might actually be kind of interesting for Mimikyu, just like maybe a Bulk Up Rest Talk set as I was talking about earlier. But again, be careful because you are limited to what you can hit with the mono Play Rough, mono Shadow Claw, and because of the bulky steals or stuff like that, they'll phase you out or haze you. Overall, I would give this a B+ in terms of move pool. I think it does what Mimikyu needs to do. It has good stabs, kind of on the weaker side for ghost types, but it does have priority to kind of make up for that. A long list of support moves if you really wanted to try them out. Maybe if you don't have a 4th move, you just want to throw like a Will-O-Wisp on there or a Destiny Bond. That would be cool. And then for setup, it has access to Swords Dance and just other means if you wanted to try them, and good mix-ups with the Z moves. So if they maybe quick knock off and they don't knock off an item, they don't know exactly what kind of move you're running or stuff like that. So then let's take a look at the friends and foes. So these are just Pokemon that I believe really help out Mimikyu, as well as Pokemon that are huge problems for Mimikyu. So first off is Galvantula. Galvantula I think is a good partner for Mimikyu just for the simple fact of Sticky Web. You get up the Sticky Web and Mimikyu's speed is no longer an issue anymore, unless it's a flying type Pokemon, of course, or has Levitate. You get rid of that speed, so now you can focus more on attack, and you can also run Adamant Nature at that point if you're running a Sticky Web team. Other than that, Galvantula really doesn't cover too many other Pokemon that give Mimikyu problems, except for Celesteela, but even then it doesn't hard counter Celesteela because of the access to like Flamethrower and just Earthquake and stuff like that. The next Pokemon I think is Mimikyu's best partner is Magnezone. Magnezone has the ability to take care of the bulky steel types that give Mimikyu problems. You're able to just switch in, get the Magnet Pull, Volt Switch on out. Pokemon that you see down below, such as Skarmory, Celesteela, Scizor, just huge problems, but you can hit them with Volt Switch, Thunderbolt, Hidden Power Fire, stuff like that, respectively. And once those are out of the way, Mimikyu can just go for a heyday. Of course, there are some other bulkier Pokemon. Mimikyu, I don't think functions that well against Stall, especially, but Magnezone, I would say, definitely one of the best partners. Another thing that it actually does is that it's able to take the Steel type moves with that 4 times resist for Mimikyu as well. So you switch in on Scizor's Bullet Punch is now stuck in there with you. If you have the right speed investment, you hit it with a Hidden Power Fire, and the Scizor is dead. Absolutely amazing. I think that you should definitely run Magnezone with your Mimikyu if you really need a strong like Steel type and way to get rid of Steel types as well. It's kind of funny how Steel types are actually such a good partner, but also the huge weakness of Mimikyu, because the next Pokemon here is Celesteela. Celesteela is just kind of a bulkier version of that. Like I said, Magnezone's able to take the Steel type moves, but you're not really going to be running defensive Magnezone, but you can run defensive Celesteela, and it also has the Flamethrower that hit the Scizors. It can run Leech Seed. It can just be very annoying. Celesteela is one of the best Pokemon to come from Sun and Moon, and definitely helps out Mimikyu here. The last Pokemon I have right here is Garchomp. What Garchomp does is has the unpredictability factor going for it. What I mean by that is Garchomp can be lead with Stealth Rocks, with the kind of like Rocky Helmet set and Dragon Tail, so kind of a bulkier set there. Or it could be like lead Focus Sash Stealth Rocks, offensive. It can be Mega Garchomp. It could be Choice Scarf Garchomp. I've even seen Banded Garchomp. I've seen the new Z Sandstorm Garchomp that's been running around. It just has so many sets that you can run that people don't really know what it is. It also allows works well with Mimikyu, because any Dragon type moves that would hit Mimikyu, hit Garchomp, you could switch into Mimikyu to kind of just take the hit. Of course, you want to be careful. Of course, if it's like Garchomp v Garchomp, don't want them to go for the Earthquake and hit your Pokemon. But it does give you that immunity and that potential switch in. The other thing is with Stealth Rocks. Is, like I said earlier, Mimikyu loves to have the hazards up so it can pick off the final kills, and Garchomp having Stealth Rocks and just being able to phase other Pokemon out with Dragon Tail really helps Mimikyu to get its job done. Another Pokemon that I don't have listed here would probably be Tapu Fini. I didn't feel like it was as strong as a partner, maybe as something like Magnezone, but what Tapu Fini does is makes it so that with the Misty Terrain, you can't be statused, so that they will not be able to hit you through the disguise. They'll actually have to attack the disguise. So you won't have to worry about maybe like something like a Toxic or a Will-O-Wisp especially. Which is also another thing, maybe Sableye giving your Mimikyu problems or something like that, which is like kind of first early turn where you're not able to set up. You don't want to get burned. You can go in the Tapu Fini. It really can't touch Tapu Fini at all. You hit it with Moonblast, you get a Misty Terrain, so you're not going to get Will-O-Wisp. You'll actually be able to see it in the replay, just the work that it can put in. As moving on to the counters, though, we have Skarmory. Much like I said earlier, Skarmory is just such a problem because of these bulky Steel types. I believe Shadow Claw, even to the Spadef set, does like absolutely nothing. Never-Ending Nightmare also does a little more than 50 or around 50, but they can just roost all it out. And once you use Never-Ending Nightmare, you're not going to be able to really get the kills with Shadow Claw. And you can't set up really on Skarmory because they could be running Whirlwind and they'll just phase you out. Skarmory, definitely one of the hardest Pokemon for Mimikyu to deal with, but pairing it with something like Magnezone makes it so much easier. Next Pokemon is Toxapex, another bulky Pokemon. While not really the Steel type, it's just able to potentially go for Scalds and get you burned, which is a huge problem. It resists your Play Rough because of the poison typing, and when I went for Never-Ending Nightmare on it, it did absolutely nothing. I believe it might have been like 50% or below 50%. It was probably max defense investment, but it was able to just haze me and then Scald and just recover up. Definitely gave Mimikyu a lot of problems. And another thing that Magnezone could deal with because it can hit it with Thunderbolt. Next we have Celesteela. Much like Celesteela helps Mimikyu, it also hurts it. Another bulky Steel type that functions just like Skarmory, While not having access to something like Whirlwind, it does have Heavy Slam, which will definitely be able to kill Mimikyu without a doubt once the substitute and the disguise is gone, and Leech Seed, and just a bunch of annoying stuff like that. Finally, we have Scizor. The problem with Scizor, of course, is that priority Bullet Punch. Bullet Punch, I believe Mimikyu can survive your standard bulky Mega Scizor's Bullet Punch at full health, but it could be a roll, and you will for sure die after Stealth Rocks. So, just something to definitely be aware of. It can U-turn out if it predicts you're going to switch out or something in fear. Scizor just gives you a lot of problems, especially with that bulky set, and Shadow Claw doesn't do enough, it just roots it up. So as you can see, just the common theme is that they just kind of stall you out, which is why Mimikyu doesn't do very well against stall. And kind of moving on to the final section before we look at the replay, my suggested items, or at least I feel like the best items for Mimikyu, are Life Orb, Red Card, Fightium Z, Ghostium Z, Focus Sash, and Lumberry. I believe Ghostium Z is probably the best item to put on Mimikyu just for that really strong Never-Ending Nightmare after you get the Swords Dance off. I feel like it's just very reliable. Of course, it is one-time use, so maybe Life Orb would be better in that kind of aspect. Life Orb just so you get more consistent damage off to make up for the lower attack stat from Mimikyu. As for Red Card is very interesting because you can get the Swords Dance off, they hit you, they break your disguise, and they are forced to switch, which puts them in potentially an unfavorable position so that you can A, maybe get another boost off, or B, just take care of a Pokemon that was troubling you or get a hit off on another Pokemon, especially if they're running something like Hyper Offense. Fightium Z, the reason I say Fightium Z is because it can go with the Bulk Up set, that if you wanted to try that out. Other than that, there's really no other reason to have Fightium Z there, and that still might even be a bit of a gimmicky set. Focus Sash is just kind of a more survival factor for Mimikyu. You can take the hit from the disguise, but then you can also take potentially another hit that would kill you, maybe like a Heavy Slam or something from that Celesteela, and you can just get off some more damage. Although it is a problem with not being able to get off a very strong attack, unfortunately. Kind of the same thing with Red Card there. As for Lumberry, this is another way that you can kind of bypass the status going through the disguise factor. If somebody tries to quick Will-O-Wisp, you Swords Dance up, and your Lumberry activates as the burn hits you and it's no longer gone. You don't have to worry about it. I can see Lumberry being interesting. Have not personally tried it, but I think it could work in the right situations. And then right here, I just decided to put kind of 3 sets. The first one is the Ghostium Z set, the most standard set with 252 attack, 252 speed, Jolly Nature, and then just a random 4 in special defense, just to give it some more added bulk. I believe this is probably Mimikyu's best set, most reliable set, and the one I've definitely had the most success with, but we're still kind of early in Sun and Moon's metagame, so there could be more room for Mimikyu to develop. Maybe it could get worse, but we'll see. Maybe other sets will kind of rise up. The next set is the Fightium Z set that I was talking about with the Bulk Up. This one I have Bulk Up, Shadow Claw, Play Rough, and Shadow Sneak, so no Rest Talk on this one. Same EV distribution, just rather we have Bulk Up instead of Swords Dance here with the Fightium Z. So pretty much we get the Swords Dance, but the defense boost. And then the last set was just kind of just some random stuff that I threw together. You got a Focus Sash, Destiny Bomb, Will-O-Wisp, Light Screen, and Play Rough. So kind of just like a lead set. You could probably put Taunt there if you wanted anti-lead along those lines. I put 208 in HP just for max bulk, 252 to get the maximum attack. I did not put a nature there, but 48 speed. I believe that allowed you the outspeed, something like, I believe it was stuff like Bisharp if they're running Adamant Nature, or Braylon if they're running Adamant Nature. Base 70 Pokemon without a speed nature. And I will go show us the replay just with the Mimikyu set that I was trying out, so we'll be right back. Alright, so I am here with the Mimikyu team that I decided to build just based around a Mimikyu Magnezone core. So for starters, we have the Ghostium Z Mimikyu set with Swords Dance, Play Rough, Shadow Claw, and Shadow Sneak. We have Magnezone here just as support with Choice Specs. Well, not support Pokemon, but the support Mimikyu with Choice Specs, Volt Switch, Thunderbolt, Hidden Power Fire, and Flash Cannon. Enough speed to beat Scizor. Then we have our Tapu Fini here with enough speed to beat defensive Landorus that has Scald, Moonblast, Taunt, and Defog. And then I have the Focus Sash, Offensive Garchomp with Earthquake, Stealth Rocks, Dragon Claw, and I'm actually drawing a blank on my last move. Then we have Scizor, just your standard bulky Mega Scizor, and my final Pokemon is Entei, which is the Choice Banded version, but I wanted a Fire type on this team, but then I realized how weak I am to Landorus, especially just Earthquake spam, other flying types with this team, so I would probably change it up. Honestly, someone like Mandibuzz might not be bad for this team because it also allows me to take on Pokemon like Alola and Marowak, even though they're a little less common. But yeah, so let's jump straight into the replay here. So I'm going to start off with Tapu Fini expecting his Landorus, but he leaves with Marowak here. I'm just going to fire off a Scald just to play it safe in case he wants to click like Shadow Bone there just to get off a lot of damage. So as he goes into his Tapu Fini, I decide to then go into my Madness Zone the next turn. He goes for Nature's Madness. A good play if he was predicting my Madness Zone. He might have just been able to do it to get the Tapu Fini if he might not have been able to touch me. But I predict him to go into his Marowak there, so I go into my Garchomp, and also predict him kind of just to switch there, so I go for my Stealth Rocks. And I go for the Swords Dance here, thinking that he's going to defog, and knowing that he couldn't even kill me with Moonblast if he wanted to, because I am Focus Sash and just doesn't do enough. I go for Earthquake there just to kind of weaken Tapu Fini for my Mimikyu, because I know I'm going to have to. And I predict him to go into his Landorus and not want to stay in case I get up rocks and go for Dragon Claw. As he outspeeds my Garchomp, with the Earthquake, I figure out, I should go into my Scizor and go for Pursuit because he's trapped and probably won't want to stay in. And I'm going to go into my Tapu Fini on his Marowak switch-in. Marowak does 50%. That's definitely not a good switch-in. So at this point, I'm scared of Marowak. I don't have a switch-in. And I go for the Scald on Tapu Bulu. The reason I have Scald is just for this kind of situation. Tapu Bulus will switch in and get rid of my Mystery Terrain so they can be burned. But unfortunately, I'm not able to get the burn there. As he gets the crit Horn Leech on my Scizor, it doesn't really matter. Scizor can pretty much switch in all day as I go for the safe U-turn and pivot out to Madness Zone. Now, this is also why U-turn just helps so much because I'm able to bring in the Pokemon that trap anything that can give Mimikyu problems, as I have enough speed to beat the Scizor here and kill with the Specs HP Fire. It goes on the Greninja, another Pokemon that is honestly really scary, but I have Tapu Fini. Luckily, hasn't been weakened that much, and he's not Protean with the Gunk Shot. As he goes for the U-turn, so good play on his part, and he brings out his Tapu Bulu. As I decide to go into Scizor here just to play it safe, and he goes in the Marowak, so very good prediction on my opponent's part. And at this point, I don't have a switch in, so I decide that I'm going to go for Pursuit just to get the damage off, as I find out he's the Fire Punch variant. And so I'm going to go into Tapu Fini knowing I can take a Shadow Bone and kill this thing. But he goes into his Tapu Bulu again. He's playing a bit risky here, knowing that I did have Scald and that he could be burned, but he doesn't get burned, so pretty solid on his part. As he goes for Horn Leech, able to finish me off. I didn't want to risk any Pokemon and bring it in just in case he clicks something else. I go in the Entei, scares him out, and I'm going to click the Choice Banded Sacred Fire. It does 24%, and then I calced it, and it was a roll, so I decided to just go for it again, and I'm able to get the roll and kill him. So, lucky me. And he's going to go into his Greninja, and I decided to try and just sack my Madness Zone here. He missed the first Hydro Pump, but it doesn't really matter because he's able to kill me with the second one. And he's able to get his Battle Bond right here. And just knowing that he clicked U-turn and stuff like that, I know that he's Spec, so I'm going to go into my Mimikyu. Quick play rough, just a safe play that I can make. And I know I will be able to outspeed Marowak, so I click Shadow Claw here. And he's going to go into Tapu Bulu here. Now, at this point, I just decided to quick Swords Dance just to boost up. It was kind of like a 50-50 whether I went into Entei. I figured he might try the quick Stone Edge or something like that, as he actually goes for the Z all-out pummeling, and I stay in, so I'm unaffected. I get off my free Swords Dance, and Never Ending Nightmare is able to finish it, which is amazing because it's also jolly too. He's going to go for Water Shuriken here. He's going to break my Disguise, and he takes me down to about 55%, so I would have even been able to live that Water Shuriken had my Disguise had been gone. Rather, though, if it was a Hydro Pump, I don't think I would have lived. Maybe, it could have been very close. But Mimikyu was able to clean up there in the late game, taking care of Tapu Bulu, taking care of Marowak, and then taking care of Mega Greninja as well. So that's just kind of showcasing what Mimikyu can do, so let's go back to the conclusion. So as a Pokemon, Mimikyu has a lot of good things going for it, but a lot of things that also bring it down as well. For starters, its fantastic ability and fantastic typing just push it to levels that Pokemon have never seen before. Unfortunately, its stats are the things that bring it down. While not horrible, they're nothing standout. and they kind of bring down the Pokemon, especially once your disguise is broken. It has the ability to run a pretty solid move. It has a pretty solid move pool. It has the ability to run several different items just for kind of mix-up purposes. But it really does struggle with that stall breaking and bulky Pokemon kind of strategy. Although it does perform very well with breaking down hyper offense and weakened walls, which is, I think, where Mimikyu really shines. I would say that Mimikyu will probably have some use in the OU tier. I do not think it will be standard in an OU at all. I think, if anything, UU would probably be a good home for Mimikyu, potentially RU. It all just depends on where the kind of walls fall in each tiers. If UU is too bulky of a tier, then it might fall down into something like RU. But I think Disguise with Swords Dance is just so strong for a lot of the Pokemon down in RU that you'll see, especially just taking a look at Pokemon that were there at kind of like in OROS. But in OROS UU, it might have done pretty well. So I think a B+ is a pretty fair grade. I thought it might have been a bit generous, but after just reading some opinions on Mimikyu, I was going through just some forums, looked on Smogon and stuff like that. People seemed to be pretty confident in Mimikyu's abilities and how it could perform. And after testing it out myself, yeah, it worked pretty well, honestly. Once, if you have the right team and the right support, it can really put in the work. But I feel like that's going to be the end of our first episode here. So if you guys enjoy this, go ahead, leave a like, subscribe if you want. Let me know what Pokemon you want me to cover in future episodes. I'm always looking for something new to work on, at least for these Pokemon, just because, like, I don't know, I've just got this burst of inspiration to kind of do this stuff again. I want to give a huge thanks also to some of my friends for helping me with, just the title, critiques for getting like how this to look the best and also just get the proper information out to you. So huge thanks to them, and yeah, I will see you guys on the next episode of Pokévals. Have a good one.